Ohana Chapter 6. Knuckles sat inside the Master Emerald Temple, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders a little too small for all his 8-year-old size. Outside, the island was experiencing one of its normal weather phenomena for a place with such a wide variety of zones. A tropical thunderstorm that made the trees shake and the chill hide. Knuckles wasn't hiding. Knuckles was big, and brave, and strong, and totally not scared of a little atmospheric pressure. He didn't know what that meant exactly, but he knew it was nothing to be afraid. Krakoom! A shriek let itself out of his muzzle as a particularly loud strike happened right overhead, causing him to retreat further into the temple and hiding behind a pillar. Not that he was hiding. He wasn't hiding. And he certainly didn't drag the blanket further over his head and swallow a whimper. Kaboom! Knuckles felt tears prick the corner of his eyes and he hastily wiped them away with his paw. Careful of his spurs, a green glow shimmered under the edge of the blanket, causing him to pause and lift his head to look at the Master Emerald. It was a glow that he was familiar with, but something felt different to it, like, was it trying to comfort him?
I am okay.
He hiccuped, scooting closer to it and flinching when another crack of thunder rolled in the sky outside. The emerald's glow softened as he got closer, blanket draped around his shoulders now as he pressed his paw against it, feeling cool rock underneath his pads.
Really, I'm a guardian. I can't be scared of anything. Besides, Dad says it's just atmospheric pressure.
Knuckles sat himself down on the step of the emerald's platform, feeling its glow warm his back. The air of the temple was humid and stuffy, but the air next to the Master Emerald was cool and comforting. It hung close to his ear as he pulled the blanket around his shoulders, watching the dark corridor for signs.
I'm not scared. Dad'll be back soon.
The emerald's light dimmed, as though it was unsure of that. Present day. The storm that hit Green Hills was what the news reports were calling a once-in-a-lifetime, which meant that Tom had to be out on patrol with Wade and left the boys with Maddie and Ozzy hunkering down in Knuckles' den. Sonic was, of course, restless and kept bouncing in his seat or tapping his foot when something wasn't keeping him occupied. Tails distracting himself with some device that he had been tinkering with lately. Maddie worriedly kept checking her phone, every now and then texting Tom for sign that he was okay. Knuckles did not really appreciate his space being invaded. It felt cramped, though there was a lot of room outside of his nest. The Master Emerald was safe. He'd made sure of that earlier, but the lack of its glow unnerved him. Its signature was but a minimum comfort, for even after all these years he still hated lightning.
Well, I'm now the man of the house.
Tom had told him as he turned to leave, full sheriff uniform on, tipping his hat and shutting the door behind him. Sonic booed and complained about it before Maddie shushed and distracted him as Knuckles tried not to think about the last time he'd watched someone walk out into a storm. But Tom wasn't like Luke. Tom would come back. Right, while a part of him was thinking he should never have gotten involved with these Wachowskis, he was finding himself more concerned about the other humans in Green Hills. Did Coral have a safe place? Did the baker have time to make sure the shop was fortified enough before she left it? He shifted his face into his paw to make it look like he was thinking and not slightly ashamed of himself for being concerned about the welfare of others. The others on Angle Island would usually take care of themselves during a storm. There were caverns scattered throughout, tunnels that had used to be part of the lava stream from the volcano in Marble Garden, unbreachable by water. It caused fights to break out over territory, or food, fights which he had had to break up and control. The inhabitants would grumble and separate, eventually conceding that they needed to be tolerant of each other for the time being as the storm raged on. Knuckles imagined that was what Tom was doing, breaking up fights and helping families keep safe. Maddie had explained to him once what a sheriff was, and the way she worded it made it sound similar to being a guardian, protecting, serving, saving. Ozzy nozzled his back as he thought. The dogs won for keeping him occupied before he heard Sonic let out a loud groan.
I'm tired of waiting around.
He whined, crossing his arms with a huff and looking at the stairs.
How long does this go on to last anyway?
It could be anywhere from 4 to 24 hours, Sonic.
Maddie said gently, placing her phone down beside her between herself and Tails, who did look up from his device.
I'm worried too, but Tom would want you to be safe here with us.
I'm a hero and handle a little rain.
He scoffed, nose sniffing and ears flattening against his head at the unsaid suggestion that he could.
I did it for 10 years.
It's different now, sweetie.
She said, reaching to brush her fingers through his grills before he whined out a
Mom.
and batted the hand away with a paw, making her giggle.
Besides, it sounds like it's coming down pretty heavy now.
Knuckles didn't know how she figured that out. She did have the kind of hearing a Mobian did. His own picked up the steady sound of water on the roof, the trickle of drops down the windows. If he concentrated, he could hear the wind battering the house.
I'm just gonna go for a little run. Be right back.
He moved quickly before he knew he did, his nest closest to the stairway that led upstairs before Sonic could even get there, much Maddie's dismayed shouting of his name. Knuckles' paws were held out, feeling the hedgehog thump into his chest before his hands came up to grapple with his own. Green eyes glared at him as he pouted.
Oh, come on, Knucks, move it.
No, you were staying here.
Sonic flipped them around before he returned the favor, arm wrapping around the younger Mobian in a headlock.
Tom said to stay in the house.
Just one little jog.
He whined, looking at him with puppy dog eyes as he struggled out from underneath the headlock, stumbling back.
You don't think of you.
Knuckles could hear the tone of his own voice rising, accusing, as he pointed a finger at Sonic.
You just be causing more trouble for Tom if you got caught in the storm.
I wouldn't get caught. I'm too fast for lightning.
The Echidna pressed his paw to his forehead with a sigh.
Even if that were true, fast energy plus lightning is a bad combination. You could end up electrocuting yourself or someone else.
He noticed the look on Sonic's face before he glanced down at his hand.
I've never had that kind of problem before.
He admitted, scratching his neck and looking slightly uncomfortable.
It just sort of comes and goes.
Maddie sat down as it looked like Sonic wasn't about to take off like he had been, sighing to herself.
I didn't really have a chance to learn how to use it like you have.
Well, would you like to try?
Sonic blinked at him and Knuckles turned his gaze elsewhere, feeling the approving glow from the Master Emerald.
We're not going anywhere anytime soon, and you could do with some lessons anyway.
And that was how they found themselves facing each other, seated on the mattress that made up Knuckles' nest. Sonic shifted in his seat, drumming his fingers impatiently on his knee and just staring at him with the other.
This is the closest you and I've been in proximity with each other for a while, Knucks.
I didn't know.
He grumbled out, disturbed a bit mentally by the thought of someone being in a space that was his at such close capacity. He had been fine with them over in the other side of the basement, but this was too close for comfort.
It's hard to tell when I'm not beating you to death.
Excuse me, but who beat you?
Sonic grinned from ear to ear as the Echidna gave him a glare.
Fire away, teach.
Copy my vision first.
Knuckles rested his hands on his knees, sitting cross-legged with his back straight like he had done with Maddie a few times before. Sonic curled his legs against each other, ear-flicking when he looked at him expectantly as Knuckles turned his paws over so his palms were facing upward, closing his eyes.
Now like this?
Sonic opened one eye shortly after he closed it to see if he was doing it right.
Clear your mind. It's okay, thoughts come, but the point of this exercise is to focus.
Knuckles paused, hearing a huff from the hedgehog as he shifted in his seat.
This isn't as easy as you make it seem.
He grumbled, and the Guardian opened an eye to see Sonic's paws fidgeting, his tail twitching.
I've been doing this for years.
He responded, eyes closing fully again.
Seriously? That's kinda sad.
Knuckles chose to ignore that comment, instead nudging Sonic's foot with his to get him to follow his lead. He heard the telltale noise of a tongue being poked out. Was it really that sad that he could meditate with ease? He pushed the thought away and let out a breath.
Focus on your breathing.
Sonic muttered something under his breath, but he seemed to follow suit, still fidgeting every now and then. The blankets made it easy to feel that.
Think about something you want to protect, or someone, it doesn't matter which.
Well, I'll be... Oh, che.
He nudged him with his foot again.
I said think about it, not say it out loud.
Sonic snorted, and the bedsheet stopped shifting. Knuckles' senses picked up on the arch of his power, the chuzz radiating from him in an alarming manner before it simmered, crackling like a fire. Knuckles allowed his own chuzz energy to wake, crackling like lightning, but remaining below the surface. Crack! A loud shriek broke his concentration, and both Echidna and Hedgehog snapped their attention towards the noise. Tails' device clattered to the floor as he curled his twin tails around him. Covering his head, Maddie shushed him, holding the kit close as he whimpered. Sonic's legs uncrossed, his hand coming down on the blankets.
Little buddy.
He enquired, hopping off the mattress next to Knuckles and zipping over to them to place his hand on Tails' shoulders.
Hey, you okay?
I am afraid of lightning.
The kid said, shrieking again when another strike sounded as Knuckles stood from where he had been seated, looking down at the collection of blankets.
I know it's just atmospheric pressure and the meeting of cold and water, but...
He whined, ears flattening against his head as he buried his face in his tails.
You Tails, take this.
The three of them looked to where Knuckles was coming over with an old, worn blanket that looked like it had seen better days, crotcheted with someone's loving care. Sonic moved slightly to the side and sat down next to Tails as Knuckles stooped to scoop up the kit's device on his way. Handing it to him and draping the blanket around his shoulders and neck, he managed to look uncomfortable, standing back and running a paw along his dreadlocks.
It's okay that lightning's scary. Nature is scary. It's big and loud, and it can feel a little lonely when there's a storm.
Tails looked at the blanket around him, a paw coming up to touch at the edge as he frowned, pursing his lips together.
I've an intelligence level of 300. I shouldn't be scared.
You are also a kid.
Knuckles knelt down in front of them, crossing his arms over his knees as he watched him flinch at the next noise.
We've been hearing. I don't know any of this smart stuff, but it's okay to be scared too.
He crossed his legs, placing one hand on his knee and leaning back on the other.
I was scared of lightning when I was your age too.
You were.
Tails asked this, Maddie hiding a small smile behind the kit now in her lap. He made an affirming sound, looking a bit uncomfortable at revealing something about himself.
I had to shelter in the Master Emerald subworld at the time, though I sometimes had to venture out to protect the other Icelanders from themselves. Things could get a little low if this guy didn't like that one, and not all of them were willing to listen.
Sonic let out a low whistle.
That's kinda nuts, bro.
The designation made him take a double glance at the hedgehog before Knuckles brushed it off, drawing a knee up and draping his arm over it.
Yeah, it kinda was.
Trusting an 8-year-old wasn't what a lot of the inhabitants were ready to do, especially one that trembled when the lightning struck.
But I did my duty. I protected the peace of the Island as well as the Master Emerald.
What kind of lifetime's doing now?
Tails asked, making Knuckles pause before he shrugged and waved a hand.
Maybe.
He looked at the kit, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth.
Feeling better.
Tails nodded and he sighed, relaxing in a reclining position again.
It's nice to feel brave during a time like this.
I figured out what I want to predict.
Knuckles, Maddie, and Tails looked at Sonic, who was looking at his paws before he curled them into fists.
When we were over there before, you said to think about something you wanted to predict. Right. Well, I want to protect Tails.
He glanced at the kit before looking at Maddie.
You too, Mom. I want to go out in the storm, I promise.
Knuckles smiled as Maddie sighed in relief before her attention was grabbed by her phone buzzing. It was Tom on a video call, and he let the other three take over that as he got up and trudged his way back over to where Ozzy was waiting for him, sitting down on his bed next to the dog. His ears caught vague comments of the conversation, fingers finding themselves in the golden retriever's fur and clenching slightly when the thunder rocked overhead. Tails might have his blanket, but he had something better. A glance to the Wachowskis laughing at something over the video call made his stomach churn before it settled, and he leaned against Ozzy, content to sit back against him as the three chatted amicably with Tom for a few minutes before the sheriff had to end the video call for some reason. The rain continued to pour. Some part of him would be that kid waiting for his father to come back during a storm, but there was a new warmth taking over the trauma that had built up over the years.